Silent Hill has been a series that I recently have finally dipped my toes into that foggy waters and came to an understanding why the franchise has been so loved. With me wanting to try out 3 and 4 soon, plus I plan to do a Silent Hill 1 deep dive where I play both the original and the remake once it's released like I did for 2. So to my excitement, we finally would be getting a new entry that wasn't a remake, something that could finally be a return to form for Silent Hill fans. I was beyond ready and remember losing my mind to the new trailer that was shown. The whole Japan aesthetic, the idea behind beauty and the horror being mixed, it really was resonating with me a lot. But after playing said title and beating the first playthrough in one sitting, I'll be real, I'm not a fan. I want to make this clear from the start that I don't hate Silent Hill F. If anything, I find the premise and ideas it tries to bring to the player to be a nice and unique take from what a lot of the previous titles have brought. But I also just feel this really wasn't what I was wanting. Something about my experience with this compared to how I felt when I played a bit of 4 and both the remake and OG versions of Silent Hill 2. It really just left a mixed feeling in my chest that I never could shake. On one hand, I think some of the moments in this game are so well made and disturbing. I started to realize why F was almost banned in Australia after I got to the arm scene. But on the other side, I found myself many times questioning why I was doing certain actions in said story. Which, when I feel the need to question why I'm doing anything in a game, that's not a good sign for me. Now look, if you like F, that's perfectly fine, as my opinion shouldn't be seen as any more valuable than yours. I also don't stand by anything that I'm saying to be the be-all end-all for this title, as I'm very open to anyone disagreeing with me, as that's how discussions are made. So if I say something that actually makes you upset, then keep in mind, your feelings are just as valid as mine, and I'm very much open to the other perspectives, as long as it's done with respect for both parties. But with that being brought up, I can finally move on to talking about Silent Hill F. I will also be taking a different approach with this video and covering more points than I have and not really going area to area, giving real deep looks into everything. So with that, let's get into talking about the newest release of Silent Hill. Now, I want to start off by saying I really do find Silent Hill F to be a stunning looking experience through and through. The other worlds especially have some of the most dreamlike and pretty areas I've seen in a while. Even if they don't really go into the visuals like Silent Hill 2 Remake did of the rusted, ridden, destroyed buildings. However, this new style I feel works wonders for the theming F wants to portray. The mix of beauty and the unpleasantness as flowers surround the walls and ground around you, especially during these segments where you have to run away as they form the terrain, always keeping up with the player as if they're also part of the chase just as much as the fog. The gray and dull colors are overtaken with the bright red as far as the eye can see, to then be hit with the grotesque imagery of rotting meat and human remains, as even the flowers sprout from the blood-covered sacks of flesh. It creates a very macabre vibe, but also goes back to the example I talked about in the SH2 video, where what you're seeing is so repulsive, but somehow you just can't look away. This even hits strong with every disturbing creature that haunts Hinako's version of Silent Hill, from the doll-like creatures that struggle to walk around, with them getting worse as you progress, going from a more human-like shape to an amalgamation of body parts. The monster who's pregnant and summons out other creatures in a very awful looking manner is the best example of this. All of this does such an amazing job at representing Hinako's deep mental struggles, even when the game can appear as if it's being shocking for the sake of shock value. Everything has a purpose, and when I say the game gets shocking, I mean it.
But it may not be that bad because technically I don't think she's supposed to be real here. But you really do be watching her get burned alive.
This to me has been one of the more surprising titles I've seen in a while. I actually felt myself getting nervous whenever Hinako would dismember her own arm or slice off the skin of her face, with these moments even beating out the iconic Pyramid Head scene, as it really shows how far out there the game is willing to go to disturb you while keeping it in line with the overall plot. It's these sections where I do understand what Silent Hill F was going for, but I think it's time to already dive into the story. The opening scene has us being greeted with a younger Hinako playing with a doll as she talks about how other kids don't like her because she would rather play with boys, with it soon showing her seemingly lost in thought as her older sister walks on screen. Hinako lets her know that she was just reminiscing about how life used to be when they were kids, but the conversation between them seems more somber than happy, We watch as she gives her sister a bell for her wedding kimono. It's revealed that Junko is leaving for good, as she's about to go away from their childhood home to be with her new husband, leaving Hinako behind to be by herself. With this all being revealed in Hinako's journal, it's obvious our protag has some resentment towards her sister leaving the village and her behind, with Hinako writing about how close they were before Junko made her decision. We see them both embrace each other in a long hug as the camera pans over to show the city down below. The music then fades in, helping embrace the visuals and audio into a seamless, beautiful view as the deep fog flows overhead, letting the logo appear, countering the white voided background.
If I can say anything about Silent Hill F, it sure comes at you strongly,
making your expectations rise, wondering what else is to come. The shot after the text fades gives us a look at Hinako's house, with her and her parents arguing about something, with said fight causing her to rush out of the house angry, with her just wanting to get away from her father's berating, with the mom tailing close behind with her words trying to justify the father's cold actions, while pleading for Hinako to just forgive him. Hinako, still refusing, sticks to her plan of heading out to town to find her friends, leaving her parents to bicker amongst themselves. Now, a big part of Silent Hill F's plot revolves around Hinako and her family. You see, this takes place in 1960s Japan, a big time where women were more seen as objects to accompany a man, with little to no real decisions in how the relationship would go, with a lot of the time the husband being the one to make choices for your own life, with this being the main thing Hinako is facing. As we learn pretty quickly, she's being forced to marry a guy to help pay off her dad's gambling debt, being nothing more than a bargaining piece to suffice a crummy choice her father made. I'm sure anyone, including me, wouldn't want to be forced to marry a guy because of someone else's mistake, which pretty much explains why Hinako ran outside to reflect to herself and meet up with her friends. And since we're outside, the themes of Silent Hill hit strong here. The soft fog coating the area, the slow winds making the leaves and trees around you sway as you head down the path getting closer to the village. I think it's a nice touch to start the game off with a walking section, helping try to bring the player into an isolating feeling. But just like how Silent Hill 2 Remake did the same thing, I find this section pretty, but calling it isolating wouldn't really be the right word choice. I'm not sure what it is about the modern games that just can't really nail the way the opening walk was presented in 2 and even in 1. But now I think I can finally get into the first big criticism of Silent Hill F brought up by old-time fans. If this is a Silent Hill experience, why does it not take place in Silent Hill? I mean, if everything that occurs in 1, 2, 3, and Silent Hill 4 happened because of the cult and the rituals they perform, that makes the once normal town into a manifestation of someone's worst fears or regrets, how can this be something that now affects a random village in the middle of Japan? Well, there's an answer for this. It's not a great one, but it does exist. With that being, the White Claudia flower is ever so present in this tiny village. Now, being fair, the flower is never stated to actually be White Claudia, but you can find on one of the notes where it says a person from a foreign land brought these flowers, with them claiming, upon ingesting, you can talk to spirits from the great beyond, with people assuming that someone from the order decided to visit Japan and give these flowers for whatever reason to a bunch of people that would in no way benefit the cult's rise to power. I mean, why would some random small-ass town cult give a single shit about trying to control people in Japan? It really would make absolutely no sense for one of the order members to come here and leave the flower and basically get no payoff for doing so. The way the cult stays in power is controlling the town they reside in. So because of that, I really hate this, as it feels so shoehorned in to justify how even if we're in Japan, the games are connected. Not only does this make White Claudia seem way more important to the main plot of Silent Hill than it actually is, it also makes it appear the only way the Order did get the power that they achieved was because of said flower, which, considering the only time we as the player ever interact with White Claudia by drinking or ingesting it, is from a newly added ending in Silent Hill 2 Remake. Besides that, we never interact with the flower at all. Now, White Claudia did help the spread of the cult's influences, don't get me wrong. The real reason they gained any sense of power was from being able to get their people to slowly take over different public institutions till they controlled everything. Then because of the town's pre-existing supernatural forces added with the really fucked up things the cult did, it helped give them the leg they needed to basically run everything, with White Claudia being more of a way to help maintain control while being a huge profit to fund their activities by selling it to tourists. Then by having everyone messed up on psychedelics that are also extremely addictive, it's how they kept everyone in check and persuaded people to do what they desired to help keep them high. But to imply this flower is the sole reason how the games are connected only because it was used by the cult, and the line that said someone traveled here to give the people of the village said flower, just seems like the most random shoehorned idea to justify the naming for this adventure. I've seen many times online a lot of Silent Hill F fans justifying this to be how the games are fully 100% connected, and even going as far as to ignore what the implications of this even being here actually implies. It would be like if Pyramid Head just showed up to attack Hinako. Even though I love 2, I would be just as annoyed. Since him being here, while I guess you can argue because he's now in the town, this means the worlds are connected, but then you have to turn your brain off and ignore anything set up before. I'll be real though, I do think the way the flowers are implemented here and what the first ending ends up being, even if it's not considered the true one, does make sense. Just not enough to connect this with the other ones for me. In all honesty, I saw a theory that I really enjoyed with it being how Hinako is actually in Silent Hill, but because she decided to move from Japan to America after being forced to be married, it's how the town itself is influencing her, with it appearing just like her homeland, since as we already know, Silent Hill can appear different to everyone. Plus the town we explore isn't even real, with us learning why from the ending you get on your first playthrough. So this idea to me really would work and allow them to justify why we're in a Japan setting, as Hinako is seeing her teenage life, but sadly that's never really done. And all we're left with is a shoehorned flower plot, as it would have been the easiest thing to add to the story because flowers can grow anywhere. It's also why a lot of people kinda assume this was supposed to be another game entirely, and just became the 5th mainline title with the hope it would sell after the success of the remake. Which I mean, it worked, F did sell a lot, and I also bought it, so... But finally in town, we get to meet our friends, with them being Shu, Rinko, and Sakuko. We don't spend a lot of time with them before the fog shows up, but I do want to cover them here. You see, Shu is Hinako's childhood friend, who kind of goes through a similar arc of not wanting to follow in the family's footstep and do his own thing instead of what they feel he should, with Hinako and him being lifelong friends, as they even will call each other partner. As we play through, you can see how Shu does try to have Hinako's back, but still has his flaws. It's only when you start playing on New Game Plus is when you learn that Shu is not a good person. You see, because his family is good with medicine, he's able to make pills for Hinako, with her assuming it's to help with headaches. But instead, they're infused with the white flower. I am intrigued by the premise of a protagonist actually taking the drug and getting to watch them experience insane imagery and hallucinations. Part of me feels it's why they were able to get really trippy for the other world sections, as these areas feel so disconnected from the actual town. It's almost as if you really are hallucinating. To me, that stuff is really cool, as this allows them to take the visuals to another level, as they aren't tied to what's around Hinako anymore. This does come at the cost of ruining what the other world sections are supposed to be in the first place, but considering this is more of a drug trip and not the actual town doing it, I feel it works fine. Now, the reason Shu drugs Hinako is because he wants to have her become dependent on the drugs with the hope it would turn away the man she's being forced to marry. Showing while he tells Hinako he has her back always, he's no better than her dad, who would rather control her over letting Hinako pick her own path. This realization that Shu does this is really shocking and felt rewarding to learn about. And I like there's an ending tied to the idea that you never consume a single pill on your playthrough, which is easier said than done because the game puts these pills everywhere for you. You can't even increase how many you can hold at once, so it really takes a lot of willpower to not use these to heal, just like a true addiction to drugs would be for an addict. It's one of the few story things F never outright tells you and just shows it, which surprisingly doesn't happen all that much, as I'll cover later. Next up is Rinko, and she's the most hated character in this, and while I do know why, it's not really fair. Now you see, when this game first came out, I got to this scene specifically where it's very much implied she pushes you down the stairs to try killing you. Then later on, she's actively telling Shu to forget about you and go for her. Silent OF outright sets her up to be a huge fucking bitch to Hinako, and you're supposed to dislike her, even finding notes where she wants Hinako to die. So when I see memes going around about how awful of a person this character is, I just thought they were fun little memes at first, but I did get it. Then somehow this opened a floodgate of a bunch of Silent Hill F fans to go on X and start going, well, these characters are way worse in the series, which I feel is a dumb comparison as well. Yes, there's plenty of people in the franchise that are worse than a girl who's upset she can't be with the guy, even though she's followed everything she's been told to do to help make her desirable to a man, with Shu instead wanting Hinako, who does none of that. With Rinko finding a sort of redemption arc later on, when you find her diary as she writes how while she still holds that wound Hinako caused, she realizes how awful and selfish she was being, to the point even feeling she never deserved to be called her friends. So when I saw posts going, oh well, James Sunderland killed his wife, so Rinko isn't bad, even though we play as a girl who killed her parents and 2 other people for the same idea James killed Mary for. With that being wanting to have the power back to live their old lives again, but somehow Hinako is just a buff little bean girl and should be protected at all costs instead of viewing her as the murderer she is. It just confuses me that people are upset Rinko gets hated when the game does everything possible for you to hate her. This is why I really despise the only way to see the game's story to the fullest extent. You have to play through the whole journey like 3 fucking times. It will change up here and there with some segments either made to be easier or removed entirely, with even more added bosses, but fuck dude, just tell the story you wanted the first time and have the other endings being cool bonuses to go for. It's so unreasonable to tell anyone to play this game more than once to actually experience what you want to say, especially when you're like me and didn't really like it the first trek through. It's the same argument I see Sonic fans use if you say you don't like one of the games. While yes, playing through multiple times will help you get better and show you more things you probably missed, but if the first or even second time through experiencing something isn't enjoyable, can you really expect anyone to give a damn to play it through another time? But yeah, back on track. Rinko as a character is flawed and selfish, but fully understandable with how her mind could get where it did from her life experiences. But I also can again not blame anyone for fucking hating her because the devs did it to themselves. Lastly is Sakuko. Legit, not really much is shown about her on your first playthrough besides her wanting to be a candy store owner and dying in like the first 5 minutes. But you do learn she's deathly afraid of the dark and is apparently on the spectrum, according to this note, but it's also vague enough to argue it's implied she could be on it, and not that she's fully 100% is. But I like to believe it's true because that shit's cool. Also, another cool fact, her English VA is the same as Panty from Panty and Stocking. Her family also owns a shrine that's been slowly going out of business due to the lack of anyone showing up, with this detail being a huge part of the boss version you face later on. Their family did worship a divine tree before it was destroyed by a burst of lightning, setting it ablaze, causing them to find a new shrine and change religion, which apparently caused supernatural occurrences to happen upon the town. Because of an ancient god being pissed, it lost its followers. Her connection to Hinako is that they're friends and made a promise to always stick by each other's side till the very end, with this promise breaking upon Hinako having to get married, causing her to feel resentment towards Hinako for betraying her. But that's Hinako's ragtag of friends, with Rinko and Shu basically being by your side for a good amount of this, getting rid of any type of isolation the player could feel. But uh-oh, the fog is coming. Commence the sequence of us fleeing from the evil clouds just for us to finally escape and come face to face with the first monster. This is Ikashimashi, a doll-like figure who wields a knife and will dash towards the player to attack you. Just like previous entries, all of these monsters are influenced by Hinako's trauma and guilt, being exacerbated by the drugs flowing in her system from Shu. The reason why the monsters are here and how the fog has surrounded us like in the previous entries is due to the fact Hinako is going through a drugged out psychosis, with the fog representing that unclarity created from being on drugs. Unlike in other titles, how that fog is tied to gods, which goes back to what I said about this town not being necessarily real. While it is a real place in the universe of Silent Hill, our experiences here are from a drug-induced psychosis as stated before, which is why monsters like the Kashimashi are here. One big thing to note about a lot of these monsters you will come across is how their face is basically torn off or the lack of eyes. That's due to the fact of Hinako's trauma being from losing who she is. With her feeling once she's married and becomes a wife, her self-image will be gone, leaving her to be a faceless husk of who she once was. That's why so many things you come across will literally have a hole in their head or be blind. Just like my praise for Silent Hill 2's monsters and their symbolism towards James's struggle, Silent Hill F's monsters land just as strong. With the pregnant boss symbolizing the fear and burden of bearing a child with it deforming you in the process. The Harai having both their legs sliced off replaced with blades to help symbolize the idea of being stuck or unable to leave from someone else's choice. Every monster like this design-wise and intentions behind them is done masterfully well. I legit have no complaints in this department, and I'm amazed how well these all land both stylistically and narratively. The first boss being my favorite, and the fact people are able to fully cosplay is another big W for me. But now, I can finally talk about the main source of debates among fans. The way you deal with these said creatures, the combat. Now, I don't hate the combat, but I don't necessarily like it. I can at least say it takes a lot more thought than SH2R for me, but it's easily not Silent Hill feeling. You see, before release, we were told the game would be changing its genre from a survival horror title to an action horror game, which you still somehow have people saying it's a survival horror because you can avoid enemies and your weapons break. By that logic, Tears of the Kingdom is a survival horror experience then. Because of them changing up the formula, they decided to give us a very basic Souls-like combat system, with a slow mode counter ability, perfect dodging with slow-mo effects added, stamina you have to keep track of, and an assortment of weapons from pipes, sledgehammers, and axes. One of the main changes added to the game's combat was that your weapons can break. While I personally hated this at first, when you realize Hinako will never find a gun, you come to an understanding why it's done this way. You're supposed to see your weapon's durability as ammo. With the more of the ammo you waste on fights, the less resources you will have. Thankfully, the weapons don't break as bad as they did in games like Breath of the Wild, so you can fight quite a bit before this becomes an issue. And you can also find repair kits to bring its durability back up as long as it's still got some juice left. I also did find the weapons to serve a purpose and be useful for certain situations, as with the sledgehammer, it was really good for stunning monsters way easier and even has its own signature ability when you block, versus knives being faster and easier to land hits while dealing less damage overall. You're easily incentivized to get good with different weapons you find to help you deal with threats that come your way. Add on to the fact your swings can be stopped by walls or objects, this forces you to think about what would be a better option depending on the surrounding environment you're in. With it also opening a really nice sense of risk versus reward if you do decide to say fuck it, we ball, and use a heavy swinging weapon with the hope it doesn't bounce back off of something. I just wish the enemies also follow the same rule, but we can't have it all, can we? It's just despite this combat isn't really that good and easily cheesable, with it all having to do with the sanity meter. Now, despite the name, this is more an ability to slow down time to do critical strikes and less of Hinako going crazy or not. Because of this meter, it easily trivializes combat even worse than the gun did in 2's remake. At least there you had to aim. Here you have to wait for said monster to attack, and when it flashes this color, you strike. The way the devs try to make it where you can't abuse this ability is the longer you hold it, the more it drains. Plus, not every attack can be countered, so you need to focus and make sure it's something you can counter or risk taking damage. With the added punishment in hard mode being if you get hit while doing this, it drains your max sanity meter altogether till you find an item that restores it. But when the game will give you so many items with a lot of these basically being the same effect but different name, it's easy to just rebuild that back. Granted, on harder difficulties, items aren't as prominent, but the higher difficulties share their own worse issues. Since enemies basically don't stagger unless you hit them with a counter hit or get lucky with a very heavy weapon. More often than not, going for any light combos will just get you attacked or cause you to miss a counter you could have waited for instead, making every battle end up being more waiting than Ocarina of Time has. There's really no reason to not spam the sanity mode or only go for counterattacks because it's safer than anything else. Not like it matters though, because even if you play perfectly in every fight, the game will throw these random jump scares at you that are designed to damage you no matter what, with the only way to avoid these is you just know it's coming, making playing on anything past normal a fucking nightmare. But thankfully, I've seen people tell me you can avoid fights and play this like past entries. Fucking goddamn it! This is also usually thrown in as a reason why F is the same experience as a classic Silent Hill game, which yes, you can avoid most fights, but if this is your first time playing, doing this will screw you badly when it comes to any actual force fight, with the usual culprit being the Shrine Maiden boss, as I don't know how many times I saw people saying how difficult she was, with most of these coming from people who avoided fights, which caused them to not really learn the combat because they wanted to play it like a normal Silent Hill title. You can easily do this after you get the gist of how everything works, but for a first time playthrough, you're really making it harder on yourself by not learning the combat that the game has many tutorial prompts for. Now, I also can't blame anyone for trying to play Silent Hill F in this manner, as there's a few enemies who can only find you if you make noise. But again, this is an action horror experience. You're kind of pushed to do combat a lot and only hinder your first playthrough if you don't fight everything. And then F does the grand sins of any sin you could make for a Silent Hill game, and that's to force you to fight enemies to progress. Which, I'm sorry, but if any other Silent Hill title forced you to fight anything that wasn't a boss to move forward, they would be torn to shreds for how dumb of a choice that is. I also don't even want to hear the excuse of, well, it only happens a few times. It's Silent Hill. It shouldn't happen at all. Plus the fact I'm seeing posts saying, here's the most optimal build for Hinako and Silent Hill F, you know this shit is so far gone. The core idea should always be avoid at all costs and fight if there's no other choice. It's also another reason why the combat was made to be kinda shit in the OG games, because you really shouldn't be doing it. Granted, this issue is also in the remake, where even if you did avoid monsters, you were more than likely spotted before you could, and it usually was just easier to remove them than letting them hang around. But dude, at least you could ignore anything at any point that wasn't a forced boss. This issue, however, with F only gets worse when you finally pass out for the first time and meet the fox guy. This is the otherworld sections of the game where Hinako will fall asleep and appear here, and usually it's like its own little maze with some interesting puzzles and some kind of whatever. The problem with this area is it ignores everything the combat in the regular world sets up. Instead of having weapons that can break, they don't now. In fact, you get some of the best weapons here. They do find a way to make it still not the best idea to fight by allowing enemies to endlessly respawn unless stuck inside a blue lantern room. But when these weapons are so good and strong, it's pretty much better to kill than run past. But you will basically spend your time here following this fox guy, as he will have Hinako mutilate her body with the benefit of getting wolf powers. Yeah, this is so not Silent Hill. Look, I'm sorry, but this is so stupid, and I get the point. She's basically removing herself and becoming this creature to symbolize that her old self is gone. But I can't take the game serious anymore when I'm unleashing my inner Ninetales Fox mode and slashing enemies like crazy with a gigantic wolf arm. This arm alone also makes fights so brain dead since most enemies can't compete with it. Then the fact you end up switching back and forth now from powerful wolf arm to weak breakable weapons, the shift in tone of the combat ends up being so jarring. I just wanted the wolf arm back every time I lost it, because if the game is going to give me the most powerful way of dealing with anything, why would I want to do anything else? It's like getting supersonic halfway through the game and then the game steals it away from you while deciding to randomly give it back after you reach certain sections. You're just gonna feel blue-balled every time. And there's no reason to actually learn enemy patterns anymore with the wolf arm when it's so freaking strong. The super mode makes you practically untouchable and lasts so long. There's a reason why on your second playthrough you get this shit early, because the devs want you to finish the game faster. Because of how brain dead it can become, you end up probably just learning to mash and win that way because it works, making the bosses be more of a skill check, because instead of learning more of how the combat functions, you basically were rewarded to turn your brain off and not think, because it gets the job done. But with the bosses, you can't just do that, as these are actual fights where you need to think. They easily can still be bested with mashing, but it's just going back to the point how normal combat becomes annoying as time goes on, especially when you have to fight a boss without said wolf arm after using it for so long. The issue with this combat system for me is Silent Hill F seems to do one thing, but then doesn't believe that idea will work, so does another thing to then feel the same way, and then before you know it, you're at the end feeling like you played 3 different experiences instead of the Silent Hill title you paid $70 for. I don't even think the story is bad. In fact, this is probably one of the better narratives of a girl dealing with the pressures of society, with the men in her life feeling they can control her, with her witnessing what happens when you give in to set control, as her mom lets her husband basically walk all over them. You then play as Hinako learning how to fight against the norms set by society, with her coming to terms that just rebelling isn't the right path, but finding out how to adjust and work around the roadblocks that have been set to hinder her progression. With the true ending having her talk to the other version of herself that holds that hurt so she can then find her own path to then end the journey by allowing her to feel whole. As Hinako doesn't want to feel like multiple versions of her are trapped inside one body, but instead, she just wants to be Hinako. I like this story because this type of idea for society is still pretty prominent in a lot of places where men do control a lot more than we let on over females. I'm not even trying to be woke or whatever, but when a whole society has to build all female trains to help stop men from touching them or making them feel weirded out, there's probably a reason for this. As Japan back in 2023 was rated last in development places regarding gender equality. While there are many attempts from women and men to fix this, Japan is still very much seated in a lot of its old ways, with some of these old ways still being things done in the 1960s. I'm not one for getting quote-unquote woke about topics on these videos because I really would rather just talk about games and avoid that altogether. While yes, Hinako's Silent Hill isn't tied to what we would consider to be the cult or whatever version of it, it's still delivered in a way that works well and does make sense from a drug trip perspective that shares ideas of these series as a whole. It captures the trauma, hurt, and reflections of oneself so well. But the problem is when I have to play a combat system that can't even follow the story's message of finding what it wants to be, it makes me not want to experience what the story wants to show. I really do think the combat is what ruined this for me, as so many little details in world building made me fall in love with what Konami wanted to show. Like hell, they even got her clothes ripping after each ritual she performs to make sense in the story while not appearing as a weird fan service thing. It helps show the struggle she is really going through as each part of her previous life is being ripped away. Not even Third Birthday could do that shit. It's the reason why I like Silent Hill F, but also don't. The second reason why I don't like the game is because of the community. Now, this isn't just a Silent Hill F problem, but it seems everyone just sucks now, both OG and SHF fans. So many times I would be browsing X just to see F supporters baiting old heads, older fans saying F enjoyers aren't true Silent Hill lovers. It's just sad to be in this community right now because all I see is just people arguing not for the sake of discussion, but just to be proven right. My experience with some SHF fans is that they will ignore any problem the game has or what it doesn't follow just because, hey, we have fog and trauma now, making it actually annoying to talk to anyone about the new title. It's legit just become who can rage bait each other with the mix of people throwing in their long hour essays about the series, claiming they know more than you do, even though this series has been built off so many things being up to interpretation that no one really knows truly what the fuck is going on. You could watch my Silent Hill 2 video and easily find something I said that you probably don't agree with, and that's because this is what the series basically is. Unless Ito or someone else confirms it, it's a bunch of people reading between the lines and going, yeah, this is true. At least I can give props for Silent Hill F to try to make sure the player knows what it wants to say, but then this does leave issues of it more telling over showing. Even at the start, you can find this where it straight up lets you know how important it is for a woman to find love. Like, damn bro, I don't even have my pants off yet, you want to wait before blowing your load? But all in all, I do want to say this. Does liking Silent Hill F make you a Silent Hill fan? And the answer is yes, why would it not? Whether I or anyone else thinks this isn't a true Silent Hill game shouldn't matter because Silent Hill is in the title, just like how you could be a fan if you only ever played the arcade rail shooter. I think what kills a welcoming community more is when you have people who pretend they know everything, and if you can't match them, then you're not allowed to be in the community. Hell, even the recent Pokemon game actually had a plot line that revolves around this thinking and how bad it can be for fans to act like this towards people just wanting to get into the series. So yes, you guys are fans, and if anyone tells you otherwise, they're dumb. Star Fox Adventure Defenders are just as important as our Star Fox 64 boys. Same as our Silent Hill trilogy fans are just as important as our Silent Hill F ones. I am interested in seeing how Silent Hill F will be viewed in a year from now, as I do feel it's still too soon for people to really have their opinions fully settled, as the honeymoon phase for anything Silent Hill is still strong. I saw the same with Kingdom Hearts 3, where upon release everyone defended that title with their life, to now no one really likes it. So while I can't say F will have the same experience, I am still waiting to see what the perception will be once we're finally out of the shock of owning another entry. But yeah, I didn't do a full deep dive like I did for SH2, as I didn't feel right going that route, as I know I'm missing out on the true experience, so it would have felt unfair to really go into that direction without playing the game 3 times, but because I couldn't get myself to, I felt this was good enough as it covers my gripes and praises while being a nice little discussion to end 61 Days of Spook off. With the final thing I again want to say is that if you like this title or don't, your opinion is just as valid as anyone. To tell someone they can't feel the way they do because you feel differently only hampers actual true discussion in the future, making us more closed in than we already are. But finally, I am done with 61 Days of Spook. This was a ride. I want to thank everyone for watching and those who supported this even after all the BS we faced with hard drives failing and whatnot. But it's finally time to move on to December and work on other projects. I'll more than likely do another 61 Days of Spook in 2027, so till then, have a good day, and thanks for watching.